Short Action Customs just launched the Nexus Press. We've got one here, and in this video, we're gonna get it out of the box. We're gonna use an ultra mount from Inline Fabrication to get this mounted to our bench. We're gonna put it through its paces, do some loading, and also talk specs and features. Hang on. Gavin here from UltimateReloader.com. The time has come. The Nexus Press is here. Let's get this baby out of the box. Okay, so got everything out of the box. Here's what we've got. Of course, we've got the main press assembly. We've got the handle. This is really nice, a super detailed template. Looks like this is a sticker so that you could literally put this on whatever it is that you're gonna drill holes in, whether it be your bench top or some sort of mounting plate or whatever, and work out your hole pattern that way. We've got 2 sets of cam over blocks. We've got the shell holders, we've got a Forster lock ring, mounting screws for the handle. Those are going to go in right here. And we've got the primer drop tube. Okay, so what I'm going to do next is I'm going to get the Inline Fabrication Ultra Mount out of its packaging, get this thing put together. So this is the Micro Ultra Mount from Inline Fabrication for the Short Action Customs Nexus Press. I will note that Inline Fabrication also makes Ultra Mounts with quick change top plates. The reason I decided to go with this non-quick change mount is it's going to be a little bit more rigid, and I think that'll work really well with this press. And I got the micro mount with this low height because I figured that would place the press at the right level. So I'm going to go ahead and put this together. We'll attach the press to it and then get it on the bench. So there's our assembled micro mount for the Nexus Press. Next, I'm going to actually attach the press to the mount. Well, we got the press mounted. I would say this is literally just the perfect height. Look at that. I don't have to hunch over, which I don't like. Ergonomically, this should work great. We just got a couple more things to do to the press, and then we'll be ready for a loading demo. Okay, so I've studied up on the Nexus Press. Really interesting machine with some really interesting features. And kind of what I thought I would do is put together a baseline setup without the dies so we can walk through the different features of the press. So the first thing we're going to look at is the shell holder retention block. And the way that the shell holder system works here, I'm going to grab the 308 because I think we'll load something with the 308 case rim, is that you've got a dome and a dish, essentially. And so the shell holder can tilt very slightly along 2 different axes here of rotation so that it can align perfectly with the die. That was the design intent here. So what we can do is we can sandwich this together and then push it in through the back. And that means that our shell holder setup now is ready to go. There's also these cam over pucks. There's the 2 pucks that are intended for normal operations so that it will hit the pucks and then you just push it beyond just that little bit, right? I've taken off, there's O-rings on both sides here. I've taken 2 off of each set so that I have an O-ring to grab on the top and nothing on the bottom. That just makes them flop in a little bit easier. If you retain the O-rings and you push them in, they'll be retained a little bit more securely, which I don't think I'm going to need. So as you can see here, the taller blocks, these pucks, they prevent cam over from happening. So if you're decapping and you just want to use a sizing die and want the decapping pin to work, but not really the primary sizing functions for the neck area and the shoulder and that kind of thing, you can put these in place. Or if you want to seat bullets and you don't want to have the cam over action, that's also an option. So I'm going to put the shorter actual cam over pucks in place. That's all good. We've got our shell holder here. I will note that there's also holders for the shell holders right up here as well. And then we can also put our other pucks down here. Okay, so there's kind of a place for everything and everything in its place. That's kind of the basic thing. Next, let's take a look at the floating die block. So when you first look at the press, it appears that the whole top rectangular section might go up and down, but there's actually a seam here, kind of a cool design where this die block goes up and down. There's 6 screws here that hold the retainer, and the press was designed for both 7/8 dies and 1-inch dies. Short Action Customs will be making those as well. So we can use a traditional die lock ring. This is a Lyman MSR die. It's going to fit right into the slot and then snap into place. But these standard die lock rings are a little bit shorter, so the die has to get pushed up to kind of bottom out, as it were, and it's a little bit more rocky in place. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use one of the Short Action Customs Forster style die lock rings that will fit a little bit more tightly in the press. And they have this nice tab that we can grab on as well, and the cross bolt for kind of the lock ring action. So we can push that in, see if we're bottoming out. Nope, feels like we still have a little bit to go there, right? So we're gonna adjust the die however that goes, you know, and it's just that easy. Now, one thing to note here is these little detent ball bearings here that are in the channel, they grab the threads of the die. So in this case, we're set up for 7/8 dies. As long as we have 7/8 threaded die surface here, it's gonna pop into place. So that means we can use these different styles of lock rings and have them effectively work the same, although it's a bit more elegant and a little bit more ergonomic if you have the Forster style lock rings from Short Action Customs. One of the specific design details and design goals for the team at Short Action Customs with the Nexus Press was to solve the issue of needing shell holder contact with the die for that cam over action for consistency. But in some cases, you'll have problems. Like, for instance, if you run a rifle with a really tight chamber. I like to chamber rifles tight, which means shorter headspace. Sometimes when the die is contacting the shell holder, you don't have enough sizing distance to bump that shoulder back that 2 to 4 thousandths, depending on if you're loading for a bolt action rig or a semi-auto. So when you put the die in on this press, we're camming over on these pucks, right? We can actually take these out and it's functionally going to be very similar. You're just not going to feel that cam over if you back the die off a little bit, right? So here we are, there's literally no feedback. We put the cam over pucks in. Now we've got the cam over force feedback, but we still have adjustability with our die, right? And that design parameter is about 10 thousandths extra seating depth that you can get. So this is kind of the best of both worlds. We get our cam over, we get the consistency that we're looking for, but we don't need the die to shell holder contact. And you know, this is something that I'm going to have to test, but I do know from talking with the Short Action Customs team that they've gone through extensive testing on this, and the results are conclusive. This really does address that critical issue. So one of the design details that you won't see right away when you look at the press are these 2 small 832 tapped holes. These are there so that you can screw down something like a brush or a chamfering tool, and that can become a part of your reloading process. It's just kind of a nice little add-on. One of the important design details for a press of this design is to ensure constant parallelism between the floating die block and the base of the press throughout the entire range of motion. And that's accomplished by means of these dual linear bearing guide rods. It's kind of a cool design, and you can feel how smoothly the press actuates. There's no binding at all, and that's how you accomplish that. A couple things that I noticed about this press when I was putting it together, specifically inserting this upper aluminum handle assembly into these linkages on the side, was how well everything lined up. So obviously when you're working with high precision CNC equipment, you know, you can hold some really tight tolerances, but also just the general fit and finish. So the steel parts on the press are pre-hardened and nitrided, and then the aluminum is hard coat anodized. And so you have very smooth finishes and should be very, very long wearing components. And again, as you cycle the press and as you look closely at it, the quality is super evident. So a couple other details I want to mention. The handle on the press is really amazing. It's large in diameter, it fits the hand well, and it's got bearings. You can definitely feel that as you cycle the press. And then also, just in general, the opening on the front of the press is very generous. And that should mean, you know, a lot of access when it comes to inserting and removing cartridges, working with bullets. I mean, more space is generally better. But let's not just talk about it. Let's get to loading, starting with sizing. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. 223 Remington. We've got some cases here that have been fired in our 223 trainer. We've got a Forster die with a factory Forster ring, which, by the way, would work in this press. But we're gonna put this die in one of these SAC rings. Okay, we'll adjust that in just a moment. I've got the tall pucks back here that are holding the shell holder captive. Take the stack out. This is how easy this is. Get our 223 shell holder off the built-in holder right there. Stack this sandwich as a unit. Back through the back. Get this straight how we like it. And then we're going to go ahead and put these tall pucks in place. That keeps this from scooting out of the way when we push a piece of brass in. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to max this out, because what we're going to do after this is we're going to compare the sizing against a traditional press with this same exact die. Okay, and I guess I might as well preserve this setting with the cross bolt. You can do that very easily without removing the die from the press. All right, first actual brass action with this press. There we go. I do need to put a garbage can under the press. Forgot about that. We've got the tube right here. For now, we're gonna just let these fall on the floor. Ooh, that's nice. Effortless, seriously. I really like that. Save the next piece of brass for the next press setup. Okay, I really like that. Let's get this other press out. All right, so we've got another press set up here. What we're gonna do is steel this die. We want everything to be as apples to apples as possible for this comparison. We're just gonna do the same exact setup here where we touch the shell holder with the die. We have another piece of brass set aside for that. Okay, that's tight against the shell plate. Go ahead and size that. Okay. Now what I've done is I've kept a piece of brass here that has not been sized. We're going to make sure that we have everything marked. So that's good. And press. Okay. So we've got unsized end press and then the ones that we did on the Nexus here. We're going to grab our 223 rem comparator, just making sure we've got the right one here. And why don't we take the unsized, and we're going to use this as kind of the datum. So we're 0 on that, double check. Yep, returns to 0. Okay, so the end press is basically the same. It didn't bump the shoulder. And for the ones sized on the Nexus, we've got, wow, -7.5, -7, -7.5, -7.5, -7. So all were within a 0.5 thousandth. And I'm not surprised that it wasn't a full 10 because we don't know where the shoulder was. And also 10 thou of movement does not equal 10 thou shoulder bump when you account for spring back. That proves that you've got that extra sizing latitude with the Nexus Press. All right, let's seat some bullets. We're gonna do essentially the same thing. Grab our die, make sure we got the right one there, and get that threaded in just a little bit. What I like to do is to get a piece of brass in the shell holder and then to kind of work the die down with a piece of brass in place. That way, that's just the spring on the collar compressing. You know that you're not going to be crimping or anything if you have a combination die. Back that off just a little bit. Maybe we'll even make sure that we have, yeah, I'll leave the scale pointing that way. And preserve our setting here. I'm not going to worry about exact bullet seating depth here since these are just dummy cartridges. So, but in typical fashion, we'll back this off a little bit and see where we're at. Okay, that looks a little deep. I mean, that's actually pretty believable. We're going to back some of these off here, just so we have a little bit more ogive exposed. Yeah, looks pretty good. Just out of curiosity, we'll see where we're at with respect to our normal 2.260. Okay, we need to zero out, obviously. Okay, so we're at 2.256. We're just about at max mag length. So that is actually a pretty good representation of a good 223 cartridge there. Again, if it's just for a bolt gun, we could probably load them a bit long. Get our 4 cartridges here. Really like the motion of this press. It's really smooth. Just feels really, really solid. Gotta love that. Okay, there we go. 4 bullets seated. We have a 5th there. We're not going to count that one because the cartridge overall length is just a little bit different. So with a good quality bullet seating die, even the threaded one should be pretty good with bullet runout. And what I've got here is a Sinclair runout gauge. So let's see how these dummy rounds are going to gauge with runout for bullet concentricity. Okay. Plus or minus 1,000th, that's really good. We could get a little bit better than this sometimes with an inline seeder, but okay, plus or minus about 1,000th on that one. Yeah, that one's plus or minus 1,000th. And plus or minus 1,000th. That is some solid concentricity results. So there you go, a comprehensive initial overview of the all-new Nexus Press from Short Action Customs. I'm really looking forward to using this press more, so look for this Nexus Press and some of the other Short Action Customs equipment in future videos. Got a lot of reloading and long-range shooting to do. This is going to be an ideal piece of equipment for that. Here's what I'd like to know is, what do you think of the all-new Nexus Press? What do you think of the features, the construction, the results that we got? Are you one of the lucky few people that already has one? Drop a comment, tell me what you think, and we'll start that discussion. That concludes this video, and that means it's time to wrap it up. I hope you enjoyed this video. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Also, we're on Facebook, YouTube, Rumble, where we've got unrestricted content, and Instagram. Make sure to follow us on all those channels. Ultimate Reloader also has a commercial solutions division serving law enforcement, the military, and the gun industry. We have some unique capabilities, including a comprehensive suite of recoil testing and evaluation capabilities, trigger profiling, and more. If you're interested in custom rifles like what we build here on the channel or gunsmithing services, you're going to want to go to rifles.ultimatereloader.com and get on the wait list. If you want to learn lucrative gunsmithing like what I show here on the channel, including building custom rifles and Cerakote plus a whole bunch more, you're going to want to check out the Colorado School of Trades, schooloftrades.edu. Thanks again for watching.